right now they are trying to gather evidence for writing, but it took us a while to get there. So you know, this little excerpt that we had, I sat them down, and it took them a really long time to figure out the nuance, right? It took them a really long time to figure out the conversation behind the conversation and to be able to explain why it was going on. And so if it takes that long, it just sort of takes that long. You know what I mean? Because I feel like if they're doing the thinking, then they're doing what they need to be doing. And if I have to get them to do their exit ticket for homework, then I will, right? And so the thing about close reading that I find is really, really difficult is not giving them the answers, right? So like just trying to figure out if we can just, as teachers, just like shut up and then just let them do it. They're gonna say some really ridiculous things at first, but after a while they start to reach the correct answers. You are going to use evidence from the provided text to prove that what we're saying about human nature is true. Okay, just making sure that's clear. All right, jump back in.
Like his perception of how he thought people should be was like that they should be ruthless and all that. That caused him to think that everybody else who was like powerful as he was the same way.
Like a stutter problem, and then he couldn't really like develop his feelings. He was every time he got stuck, like he always was a fight. What we saying is that some other person who really thinks that it's really wrong and said, man, he said, Quanzo, like, you messed up, you should never did that. They said, like, what you, and I said, how we accept a stereotype like that. He said, yeah, what you have done when I put it, we did not switch the whole lot, though they accepted all this killing, like, and now all of a sudden he's saying, like, we should be, like, you know, like punished or something like that. So now I'm going to put this right here.
Wait. But I thought you were like, we writing about human nature, but we just using evidence from the text.
In this situation, he believed that African men didn't consult their wives. And so when he found out that Uzumina, he couldn't do nothing without telling his wife. He shook his head outwardly.
So was he convinced?
No.
But who just learned something? But is he convinced?
No.
So did he actually learn that? Go back to our thesis statement. Are we talking about characters? Who are we talking about? When we have a thesis statement, are we just summarizing what the characters are doing?
No.
Instead, turn around and look at that. Who are we talking about?
The people.
Which people?
The audience.
Who's the audience?
We're the audience.
Yes.
So we're learning something. It's not about what's the character, it's the fact that it's getting learned at the end of the day. So this is good. Give me 5 minutes.
It says that right here, he was like, when I was young, I thought he was a strong man. Basically showing that you could actually open up and show your emotions and connect with other people. So yeah, that actually put him in a box. Like that's exactly why he was so aggressive.
Usually, you know how they went to the house and I'm like, their wives would come. He probably showed affection towards the wife, but the fact that he put him in the box that he wasn't able to.
Yeah, he felt like he didn't have to answer to anybody because as a man, all of the things that his father went through because of the person that he was, he just thought that if I'm anything like my father, I wouldn't be able to be as successful. He just wanted to like get all of that out. So he basically all of his aggression,
Like that was his great
with the fighting, like that's where his success came from. So he felt like he had to be strong and show people that he was strong through being what's the other word? Aggressive and what else?
I can hear it.
Yeah, just being aggressive. So yeah.
He's trying to get him to realize that you can still be powerful and you can still be strong, but you can still show emotions. Like you can have feelings for one another and still be strong. Like you don't have that because you share something with somebody, like your problems and your relationship problems, something like that, like your emotions and feelings. That don't mean you weak. That means that you still is powerful.
Okay, yes, hang on. I'm sorry, I gotta throw this in there. Yes, that's happening in the story, in this imaginary world that's not so imaginary because it is based on his grandfather, kind of, right? But there's this imaginary story happening in the book that you just described. Wonderful, thank you. Now the next step is stepping outside of this and saying, how does this lead us to what you guys came up with last week over here? So that's what they need help with, because they're still in the book and I need them to step out into the world.
Outside world, like this is what stereotypes lead us to believe. Like this is what it's about. Like this is what the man is about. Like Okonkwo, he had us thinking that it's all about being strong, and he can't be seen weak and all of that. And he thought that the things that he did was him being strong, and like us readers, he led us to believe that because that's what we thought. Like we all thought that Okonkwo can't be seen weak at all. Like even though him killing his son was a weak trait to me, in my opinion, but it let us believe for so long like they aren't violent and things like that, and so. That's how it is.
But how? Let's get to the how before it.
I'm gonna agree with what John said, because like it's like basically going off of what you know, or like what you saw or read. Like it's just like in the outside world when you was telling us on how you don't like the show Love and Hip Hop because of how people on the TV like portray us and like see us. Like if they never interacted with us, like they go off of what they see on like them shows when they be fighting and stuff, so they automatically assume that we are violent, that we fight, and it connects to the story because we was only looking through a Okonkwo's eyes. Like we didn't see other people's perception on it. Really, like we only going off of how he handled his situation, like how when he get angry he fight, and like he don't respect his wives, and we thinking, oh, that's just how all of them are. They probably don't respect their wives. Mm-hmm. Every time they get mad, they fight. So that's just what we thought because of what we read.
Who set us up to think that? What did they? I didn't say that. Other people said that before me. I promise. Okay.
You said, well, they said, Ms. Wright.
Talk to them. Let's see.
That you can't help but to go off your first instinct. So even though maybe that was the author's purpose for us to look at this story like that, but it's also your own perception in your mind. So when you was reading it, you was like, you just was going off your first instinct. So now that you realize after you read it, you realize we're kind of just like the people that they was talking about. We are kind of ignorant too, but ignorant-minded, I want to say. Like that's what the author portrayed the characters how they are, but we still interpret it how we wanted to interpret it. That's what I'm saying.
Brittany?
So from the very beginning of the book, our information was limited to Okonkwo's perspective. It immediately said that his father was basically a deadbeat, did nothing wrong, but it showed that all he did was show emotion and played music and lived a happy life, but he owed people money. And at the beginning of this, it says that his own son was becoming too much of his grandfather, and to make himself feel better about thinking of how horrible his grandfather was, his own father was, he had to think of his own manly strengths, his own show of manliness, which in this case was killing someone that's been in his household for months.
Years,
that called him father and was like his own son to him. And then if you go to the back, like what they were saying about the shaking the head, it was showing that now we see that this man is known to be a strong and great man, but other people know that he showed emotion and his wife's opinions matter to him.
We learn that you can't just go off stereotypes and what you one person point of view or one person view period or whatever. It's like you can't, stereotypes will have you gotta expand and learn your knowledge and to learn new things about either a person, a story, a place, whatever. Like you can't just take one stereotype and just take it factual and make it of that's what it is or of one thing. Like you have to expand and grow. Devontae?
It's pretty much like the lady in the TED Talk saying, because she had that single story, and that's what her mind was stuck to. So she was saying, you have to get outside of that single story and learn about everybody around you to figure out how to deal with all these different people in new places that you have to deal with in your everyday life.
Did Okonkwo learn anything?
No.
How do we know? Somebody find some proof that it was us that did all the learning as readers. I have not heard. Oh, Preston, go for it.
After he said that I remember when I was young and there was a song about them, he could not do anything without telling her. He said that, and Okonkwo replied and said, I did not know that. I thought he was a strong man. He was indeed, said Ofodu. Okonkwo shook his head doubtfully, saying that, showing him that he didn't believe that he could actually be a man.
Has Okonkwo done much changing?
No.
But who has changed in this whole ordeal? Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. So, what evidence is the strongest that proves there were horrible people and believe stereotypes when that's the only thing that we are presented with?
I said it was always said that Ndule and Ozomina had one mindset. Oberica. I remember when I was a young boy, there was a song about them. He could not do anything without her. I said that was a strong piece of evidence because, and like onto the bottom with the rest, it was a strong piece of evidence because even though he led them through war and all that, he still had an emotional connection with his wife. And just because he had that don't mean he was a weak person.
And stop. Are we trying to figure out the definition of masculinity right now?
No.
What are we trying to figure out right now?
The definition of human nature.
What are we trying to figure out right now? Complete sentence. What you got?
So we trying to find out the stereotypes of what we assuming that people was, and that you're saying that these people are violent, and that the other way around, the evidence shows that not everybody is not that way.
Okay, so yes, this is what we learned in this interaction, right? And it also taught us that we're whack, right? So yes, so what am I writing in here that lets us know that having a limited perspective duped us? You want to keep going? Mm-hmm. Please.
Same thing with Jordan said. I remember when I was a young boy.
And you want all of that? You want is all of that the importance? You stole his evidence, man. That's messed up. Okay, so come on, bring it back. Bring it back. We only have a few minutes. Let's go. So what am I writing?
It's talking about that people they shared emotions, and that it wasn't that because you're sharing emotions, don't mean you're weak. I mean,
Is that what it said?
Just write the poems like I remember.
It's showing that people connected with emotions, like they show, like they had feelings towards another. That people thought that they was violent and violent and stuff, but they still showed emotions.
Evidence. What goes in this box, you guys?
A direct quote.
A direct quote. I got the direct quote. I remember when I was a young boy and there was a song about them. He could not do anything without telling her. Simple.
Is that the best one?
Yes.
Which is the best one? Because the thing is, guys, look, you're really creative. You could choose some of this evidence and you could explain it so beautifully with all this flowery language and the angels would sing. Great. However, there's stronger evidence. So let's find, what's going to make it stronger, right? Make it specific to what it is we're trying to do. All right, Carl, what you got?
I did not know that set of comments.
What do you know who now?
I did not know that set of comments. I thought it was a strong man could do. Which Ofedu replied, he was indeed. Okonkwo responded by shaking his head down.
Okay, so that's my laziness speaking right there. So, yeah, that's what he said. So, over here, you can see all of that. You can see all of that. Okay, so all of a sudden we learned something, right? So, how would I explain this context really quickly?
Don't be closed-minded. You have to be open-minded, and so don't basically judge a book by its cover because that's what I think you mean basically.
Is that connected here?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Really? Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, explain why it's connected, and then Matt is going to explain why it's not.
Yeah, that people tend to accept stereotypes as a full truth. That's what we did.
Yeah.
We thought that every man, like in the village, was strong and like beat his wife and didn't care nothing about it. And that's how it just was. And we didn't know that men were like had a connection with their wives and stuff until we read about the other man and he died and his wife.
I agree. I thought you was talking about what she said.
Just kidding. Okay, guys, I'm going to be hammering down on you about this because our major thing is making our connections from our theses to our assertions to our evidence, and then so on and so forth. You guys have all these good ideas, but sometimes they'll just be disjointed. And so for the next week or so, we're really just going to hone in on close reading for writing and discussion, making sure that number one, you can step outside of the piece when you're talking literary analysis and not just do a bunch of recapping, but then making sure that the evidence you choose is plausible, warranted, specific, and you explain the context, okay? So I'm going to keep that checklist up. So what I want you to do, and I want you to, some of you are going to be wonderful at this. Some of you are going to fumble through it. Some of you are going to think you're wonderful but still fumble. I want you to go and create the rest of your spider maps for 3 body paragraphs. How many body paragraphs? 3. All right, so we have 2 main ideas. You can steal those, but you need to make sure that you come up with one of your own, okay? And you need to get it all the way out to the interpretation. All right, all the way out to the interpretation. It's gonna be ugly. You're gonna hate it when you see it again tomorrow, and that's fine. That's fine, but we're gonna make it better together. Okay, was that hard? What they're going to try to do at home tonight is they are going to try and finish making the spider map that we were making on the board, either using their own main ideas. Well, they should have at least one main idea of their own. The other 2 we came up with as a class last week. So they have to come up with another one, and then they're going to map it out from thesis to assertion, 2 pieces of evidence from the text and context, and then interpretation from there. So they're not actually going to write the essay. They're just going to map the essay out. Usually they will choose 2 or 3 pieces of evidence so that they can sort of compare the difference between, they can compare the good ones versus the bad ones. And so sometimes they like to have extra. So that's what they'll do. Sometimes they'll get on the phone or they'll get on the bus and they'll just have a long conversation or an argument even about what the best evidence is. And I feel like I'm happy as long as they're doing that thinking, because to me, that's the difficult part. If you're thinking critically about why you chose the evidence that you chose, then to me, you're being a close reader. You're being a careful reader. Even if it ends up being wrong and ridiculous, we can always correct it with that same style of thinking at some other point.